Hi, welcome to Roy's Game Table. Today we have the Green Goblin Scenario Pack versus the Wrecking Crew Scenario Pack. Which one should you buy? Pull up a chair and let's find out. In this video, I'm going to be doing a comparison between the Green Goblin Scenario Pack and the Wrecking Crew Scenario Pack. Now, why do I want to do that? Why am I doing that kind of a video? Well, first of all, I want to do it because I just want to. Hopefully it'll be entertaining for some people. Hopefully people will enjoy it. That's why I do the videos that I do anyway. So that's one reason, but also there may be some players who have gone out and bought the Marvel Champions core set and they enjoy the game and they want to jump into an expansion pack, a scenario pack in particular, but they don't want to buy both of them right now. They just want to buy one of them for whatever reason. Maybe they only want to buy one of the two because they don't want to dive into too much of it too fast. They want to make sure they're going to continue to like the game. And so they're only interested in buying one of the packs instead of both right now. Or maybe they've only budgeted for one in their budget. I mean, in this time that we're at, in this coronavirus and the crisis going on, people still want to play their games and they still want to have their hobbies, but they have budgets. And maybe they've only budgeted enough money for them to buy one of the two packs that are available. But whatever the reason is that people want to, you may want to only buy one of the packs, if that's you and if that's the case, today I'm going to look at the Green Goblin Scenario Pack and what it has to offer and what the kind of the overall value, hopefully, of what that pack is, and we'll compare it to the Wrecking Crew pack and what it has to offer and the overall value of that. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give my recommendation on which one of the two packs I think someone should buy if they're looking at just buying one of the two packs for right now. So to start with, let's look at the Green Goblin Scenario Pack. All right, there are two scenarios in the Green Goblin Scenario Pack, and the first one I want to look at today is the Norman Osborn Risky Business Scenario. Now, one of the things that makes Marvel Champions unique, in my opinion, is that the heroes have not only a hero side, but they have an alter ego side. So Peter Parker is on one side, Spider-Man on the other. She-Hulk on one side, Jennifer Walters on the other. And that was something that really stood out. And depending on which side those characters are on, the game will play out differently. Well, in this, you may not know, but Green Goblin was actually the first pack, expansion pack, announced and released for Marvel Champions. And so, before anything else. And so, they took that very unique aspect and of the alter ego and hero side for the heroes, and they took that aspect and applied it to the very first pack they released, but they gave it to the villain instead, because in the Risky Business scenario, you have Norman Osborn on one side, which is Green Goblin's alter ego, and then on the other side you have the Green Goblin. And, to me, that was just a genius and brilliant way to kick off the expansions. To take something that was unique and fresh, in my opinion, about the core game, and to go ahead and apply it right away to a scenario pack, but to give it to the villain. And just like with the heroes, Green Goblin in Risky Business plays differently depending on if he's on his alter ego side of Norman Osborn or if he's on his Green Goblin side, which is obviously the villain side. And the way that it plays out differently is really done through this environment right here, the criminal enterprise. So it says criminal enterprise enters play with 2 infamy counters on it. If there are no infamy counters here, flip Norman Osborn and criminal enterprise. So, sorry I keep messing up on that, but anyway, so you'll have counters on here, and Norman Osborn, if you can see up here, there's a star for his attack, and that's because if you're in hero form, instead of Norman Osborn attacking you, he actually will put more counters on the criminal enterprise. Okay, and I know it's a threat marker. You can use whatever counters you want. I don't really have any green ones available, but as he attacks you, if you don't attack him, because the only way to remove these counters is to actually attack him. And so if you don't attack him, he's just going to keep building these up. And the more he builds up, the harder it's going to get him to flip the Green Goblin so you can actually do damage to him to defeat him. Because you can't defeat him while he's on Norman Osborn. You have to figure out a way to flip him to that. And as I read, you flip Norman Osborn by removing all of the counters off of Criminal Enterprise, and you remove those counters, as I said, by attacking him. And so once you get all the counters off, he will flip to the State of Madness. The environment will flip the State of Madness, and it tells you when it enters play to put 2 counters on here per person. And then if there are no Madness counters here, flip Green Goblin to State of Madness. Well, when you flip the State of Madness, you flip to Green Goblin. And now, once he's over here, you can start dealing damage to him. And obviously, once you defeat him on his side 1, he goes to side 2. And then if you defeat side 2 in Standard, you win the game. Expert, you would defeat side 2 and then side 3, just like the other villains in the core set. But he has to be on Green Goblin's side before you can do this. And so that's how he plays out differently. The environment helps him to do that. Now, there's really no way to add counters on this to keep him on Green Goblin, but he actually takes counters off. In fact, if you're an alter ego on his Green Goblin side, you see the star there for the scheme, and that means instead of him placing threat on the main scheme, he's going to actually remove a counter off of State of Madness. And there's also some other cards that can remove these counters. And let me give you a couple examples of the cards that can remove counters off of State of Madness. Here's one, All in a Day's Work. Place 2 infamy counters on Criminal Enterprise if you cannot remove 2 madness counters from State of Madness. And you see the boost there, place 1 infamy counter on Criminal Enterprise if you cannot remove 1 madness counter from State of Madness. So you see this card puts counters on Criminal Enterprise or removes counters from State of Madness. Also, one of the minions, Hired Gun, if its boost is that to place an infamy counter on Criminal Enterprise if you can't remove a madness counter from State of Madness. And so if that comes out as a boost, you're going to do that. Same thing with the Private Security Specialist. If he comes out as a boost, you'll place an infamy counter on Criminal Enterprise if you can't remove 1 madness counter from State of Madness. And so those are some of the cards in his deck that will affect whether or not you put counters on Criminal Enterprise or remove counters from State of Madness. Once they're gone, this environment flips back to Criminal Enterprise, and then he'll flip back to Norman Osborn. So you've got to deal with that throughout the game, him flipping back and forth. And if he does unexpectedly flip back to Norman Osborn, you've got to take out the counters on Criminal Enterprise to get him to flip back. But you do have to be careful, because as you see on Green Goblin side 1 here, when revealed, deal 3 indirect damage to each player in hero form. So as soon as that flips, you're taking indirect damage. Side 2 of Green Goblin, it's 4 indirect damage to each player. And then I'll let you see for yourself what side 3 is if you decide to get the pack. But so that's how that one works. So a very, in my opinion, very interesting and very unique scenario. Now, it is also a bit on the easy side. The reason why I say that is because if you start out the game on Alter Ego, if all you gotta do is just kind of flip to Hero side, and you can just hang out on Hero side for a round or two to build yourself up until you're ready to flip Norman Osborn. And the reason why I say you can just stay on Hero form is because you're really in no danger of taking any damage, because Norman Osborn isn't going to attack you. He's going to put counters on Criminal Enterprise. So, just leave him on Norman Osborn's side for a while. Make sure you're keeping the counters under control where they're not getting out of hand. So you're going to attack them a little bit here and there so that when you're ready, you don't have a lot of tokens to take off of here. But you can just stay in hero form and just kind of build up. That's a strategy I use, and I think a lot of other people use. And then when you're ready, but you do have to make sure you're ready, because again, once you flip him, he's to State of Madness, he's going to deal that damage. But again, you're not going to flip him until you're ready. And then once you get him on Green Goblin's side, make sure you also can handle that attack that comes out in that first time he flips. And then when it comes back to your turn, if you're concerned about your health, then go ahead and flip to Alter Ego so you can heal. Because Green Goblin isn't going to put Threat on the main scheme. He's going to remove madness counters. And so you can kind of game it a little bit to keep yourself alive and build yourself up. I feel like you have a lot more control over how the game plays out in this scenario than you do some other scenarios like Ultron and Claw, where you feel like things can get out of hand on their own. And even sometimes that's true of Rhino. But with Risky Business, I feel like the player has a lot more control over what goes on, and that kind of makes it easy. But still, it is a unique scenario, and it is a fun scenario. So now let's look at the Mutagen Formula scenario. Okay, the next scenario is called Mutagen Formula, and it starts off unleashing the mutagen as side 1B, and it always starts the game off with a Goblin Thrall minion in play, and I'll show you one of those in a minute. But this scenario reminds me a lot of Ultron and Claw. It has a lot of similarities because this scenario is going to put out a lot of minions. Just like if you play Claw with Masters of Evil, there's going to be a lot of minions there. Ultron, obviously, with the drone minions. But Green Goblin has his own minions, and there's going to be cards, and he's going to do things to get his minions into play and to mess with you. And let me show you what those minions are. There's the Goblin Thrall I was talking about. It's just a guard, but you can see that. You have a Goblin Knight, pretty heavy, 7 hit points, and after he attacks, you discard a card, and if it's a Goblin minion, you put it into play, so this Goblin Knight's going to try to put even more minions into play if he comes in. You got a monster there. When he's revealed, you're stunned, and if you're already stunned, you take 2 damage, another high hit point minion, and then you have a Goblin Soldier, which has 5 health, and when you defeat him, the engaged player takes the damage. And there are a few copies of the Goblin Soldier, a few copies of the Goblin Thrall. So there's going to be a lot of minions coming out in the Mutagen Formula scenario that you have to watch out for. And also, one of the things that makes this scenario challenging, because to me, the Mutagen Formula scenario is one of the more challenging scenarios, arguably the most challenging scenario. I'm sure you can make arguments for Claw maybe or Ultron, but this one's a hard one too because of the minions that come out, but also not the side 1 Green Goblin necessarily, but when you look at side 2, it says when revealed, deal 2 encounter cards to each player. So if you're playing an expert at the very first round of the game, you're going to actually have to deal with 3 of the encounter cards. The 2 that you deal here when you start the game, and then the 1 that you draw normally. And if you're playing on Heroic 1, you're going to be dealing with these 2 plus the 2 that you'll have to deal yourself for a total of 4. And then if you play Expert, when you get into side 3, it's when revealed, deal 3 encounter cards to each player. So not only does he have a lot of minions, but he's going to be dealing out encounter cards as you defeat each one of his stages. So it can be this is going to be a tough, challenging scenario, but I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of people, they want their cooperative games to have challenge and to have some difficulty. And in my opinion, the Green Goblin Mutagen Formula scenario is definitely difficult, and I enjoy it for that reason. Now, I do want to show you some of the cards. I was talking about how he puts minions out, and as I said, this side 1A of this Unleashing the Mutagen tells you to put a Goblin Thrall out at the beginning of the game. But Wicked Ambition here says discard X cards from the encounter deck where X is equal to double the villain's stage number. And each time a Goblin minion is discarded this way, choose either take 3 damage or put that minion into play engaged with you. So you're not going to be able to take a lot of damage, so you're probably going to be putting some minions into play if you discard them. So that card can put some in. And then you have Overrun, which is when defeated in player order, each player must discard 2 cards from the encounter deck and put each Goblin minion they discarded this way into play engaged with him. And you're going to want to defeat this side scheme because it has 2 acceleration tokens on it. And then even Unleashing the Mutagen itself, its effect when completed is that if you're not engaged with a Goblin minion, you discard 3 cards, and then you put the first Goblin minion you discarded into play with you. So I get, into play engaged with you. So as you can see, the Green Goblin Mutagen Formula is putting those minions that I showed you into play against you, and then you're dealing yourself encounter cards as you beat the stages. So it is quite a challenging scenario. The Green Goblin scenario pack also comes with 4 modular sets. First one is the Goblin Gimmick set, and this is actually the one that's recommended to play in both the Risky Business and the Mutagen Formula scenario. And it just has some Goblin gimmicks. It has this Goblin glider here that attaches and just gives a +1 attack. It has the regenerative healing that can heal the Green Goblin. It has intimidation. So you can either spend resources or place a boost face down. And so just has some gimmicks in it. The pumpkin bombs here, that after he attacks, it'll do 2 indirect damage. This card will do 2 indirect damage. And so just has some gimmicks. And as I said, that is the modular set that's recommended to play in both of the scenarios that come in the pack. And then you have the other 3 modular sets here. And each one is a Spider-Man villain. So, which is kind of, obviously makes sense to be in a pack with Green Goblin. The first one is Scorpion. And Scorpion's modular set is kind of built around stun. As you can see, after Scorpion attacks and damages a character, stun that character. So he's going to do that himself. And then Tail Sweep here. When revealed, Scorpion attacks your hero. If no attack is made this way, you're stunned. And a couple of copies of that. And then the side scheme, place 2 additional threat here for each stunned character. So his modular set is built around stun. And then we have Electro. This is the Power Drain set. And it's about discarding encounter cards to help get to that acceleration token faster. After Electro attacks you, discard 1 card from the encounter deck. You see it right there. Lightning Bolt. Discard 2 cards from the encounter deck. Okay, take 1 indirect damage for each one that you discarded. Or actually, take 1 indirect damage for each boost icon discarded this way. When revealed, an electromagnetic pulse. Discard 7 cards from the encounter deck. And so his cards deal with discarding cards from the encounter deck. Then you have Tombstone. And his thing is kind of around making you pay resources, in particular mental or physical. You see there, on his card, after Tombstone attacks and damages you, discard a mental or physical resource from your hand if able. Media coverage, you have to attach this to your identity. And you resolve when revealed effects 1 additional time, and it stays there so you can spend a mental resource. Another one, kind of nasty in here, is All Tied Up. You attach it to your identity, and you cannot ready or change forms. And you have to spend a mental and physical resources to discard this. This can be very detrimental in a solo game. If you're on an alter ego form, you get this and can't flip back, that scheme's going to take off on you, and you can't do anything about it unless you spend a mental or physical resource. So you see what his modular set can do. And you get 4 of these sets. Now, if you think about it, you get 2 scenarios in here, Risky Business and Mutagen Formula, and 4 modular sets. So let's say that you want to play everything you can play just out of the pack. To get as much gameplay as you can just out of the pack for Green Goblin. Well, let's say that you're going to use the recommended modular set for Risky Business and Mutagen Formula. That's Goblin Glider. Okay? So you're going to use this modular set for both of them. Well, the 4 different modes of difficulty that I know of that have been released are Rookie, Standard, Expert, and Heroic. So if you're going to play, that's 4 different difficulty modes. If you play those on Risky Business with this modular set, that's 4 games. Play those with the Mutagen Formula with this modular set as recommended, that's 4 more games for a total of 8. And then if you want to go back through and play with just with 1 game with each of these sets, that's 3 more games for a total of at least 11 different games that you can play from the Green Goblin scenario pack. And that's at least that many games. Who knows what the actual combinations are? Not to mention, that you can put these 4 modular sets in other villain sets except for the Wrecking Crew. You don't put modular sets in Wrecking Crew, but you can put, you know, Electro's Power Drain set in with Rhino. You can put the Tombstone Running Interference set in with Claw. So you have a lot of different options here, and you can get a lot of replayability with this Green Goblin scenario pack. Okay, so here's the Wrecking Crew. In this scenario, you're going to be fighting 4 different villains, and they have quite a few hit points. This is the B side, which would be the expert side. But I don't know if you can see it, but like Wrecker, for example, has 18 hit points, Thunderball 16, Bulldozer 15, Pile Driver 14. And if you want to play the what's called the Extreme Challenge, you've got to beat the A side of each one of the 4 villains, and then the B side of each one of them. So you do have a lot of hit points you have to chew through when you're fighting the Wrecking Crew. But they're not all 4 going to attack you each time or scheme against you each time. There's one of them is going to be the active villain, and that's the one who will attack or scheme. That's also the one who will draw an encounter card from his deck. Now, each one of the 4 villains have their own deck of 15 cards, and you don't put any modular sets in it, and you don't put the standard set, so you won't have your Nemesis minion coming out in the game. But you're just going to be fighting the 4 members of the Wrecking Crew and defeating them to win the game. Now, there is a main scheme here, and once you get to 6 per person, I know there's a little bit of glare up there where the 6 is, maybe you can see it, but once you get to 6 threat per person, you lose. But that's really just a timer, because the members of the Wrecking Crew, when they scheme, they don't put threat on the main scheme, they put threat on their side scheme. And you would use a token to denote which one is the active villain. I always use the first player token because I usually play solo, and this is just, I don't really need the first player token by myself. So this is a good way to do it. So let's say that Wrecker is the active villain and you're an alter ego. He'll scheme for 3 plus whatever his boost is, and that threat will go on his side scheme. And then if he's supposed to attack, he would attack. And as you can see, they all have different attacks. Wrecker gets +2 if his attack is undefended. Thunderball will deal 1 damage to each character that you control. Bulldozer has overkill for his attacks. And Pile Driver actually doesn't have anything unique. He just has Retaliate 1. And so they all have something that's kind of unique, and 3 of the 4 have something unique about their attacks. But let's say you're scheming, and let's say that Wrecker here is the active villain. Well, his threat would go on his side scheme, which is called Day of Reckoning. And whenever he gets to 10 or more threat here, you deal 2 damage to each friendly character. So yes, that's right. Your alter ego can take damage. If this goes off, if it gets to 10 while you're in alter ego form, obviously your hero can take it. So you got to keep that in mind, that Wrecker's side scheme is going to deal 2 damage to you no matter which side you're on. And then it says that once it goes off, you remove all but 3 threat from this scheme. And that's common among all 4 of them, that once their side scheme goes off, you go down to just 3 threat on each one of their schemes. As you can see, though, Wrecker's scheme starts off with a 6, and they all start off with different amounts. And Wrecker does start the game as the active villain. But anyway, that's his side scheme. And then Thunderball, his side scheme is Thunderstruck, and he basically will stun you. He's going to stun each one of your friendly characters if his goes off. And so you don't want his to go off for that reason. And then you have Bulldozer. His is Clear the Road. And if his goes off, you have to discard 10 cards from the top of your deck. And so it's going to just accelerate to get you closer to having to draw that extra encounter card and deal with an extra encounter card on the villain phase. And so you got to keep that in mind if Bulldozer's side scheme goes off. And then Pile Driver, his side scheme, Pile It On. If it goes off, you have to discard the upgrade or support that you control with the highest cost. And so this can be very devastating for Iron Man, for Black Panther, for people like that, to lose part of their tech upgrades or whatever. You know, you want to be careful that pile drivers doesn't go off if your character's like that, or you're going to lose your supporter control, your supporter upgrade with the highest cost. And so they each have their own side scheme that can go off. You got to manage that throughout the game. And the main scheme tells you who's the active villain. You know, it says after step 1 of the villain phase, where you place the 1 threat on the villain phase, on the main scheme, you place 1 threat on each one of the side schemes, and then you move the active counter to the villain whose scheme has the most threads. So that's how it can move from one way that it can move from one villain to the other. Now, there are some cards that they each have in their deck that are similar, that do the same thing, because the Wrecking Crew kind of can work together. And it's kind of weird and kind of cool in a way how they work together. So, for example, I've been waiting for this. When revealed, the active villain heals 3 hit points, and give that villain a tough status card. Well, that's not real interesting, but it's the boost on here that's cool. Move the active counter to the villain with the least threat on his side scheme, that villain scheme. So, you know, that could be that could be something unexpected. Records could scheme. You draw this as a boost, and then all of a sudden, Pile Driver may have the least threat on his, and so he's going to scheme all the same turn. So, and they all have a copy of I've Been Waiting for This and that if it comes out as a boost, it's going to do that. Another way that they can work together is Get Wrecked here. When revealed in Alter Ego, the villain whose side scheme has the most threat schemes, and in Hero, the villain whose side scheme has the least threat attacks you. So you draw this as an encounter card, and you might get attacked by a villain you're not expecting to be attacked by. Maybe Bulldozer with Overkill or something like that. Or you'll have one of them that'll scheme on you. And then you have Buddy System. So when revealed, choose the villain whose side scheme has the least threat. Reveal the top card of his deck. Top 2 cards instead if he is the only villain in play. So you might have to reveal a card from another villain that you weren't expecting to do. So that's kind of cool how they have cards in their deck that can work together. Now, as far as replayability, there really isn't a lot of replayability here in the Wrecking Crew pack, because you don't put any modular sets in any of their decks. They're fixed 15-card decks. You don't put the standard cards in the deck, or the expert cards, and so you don't even have a chance for your Nemesis minion to come out into play. I guess you could house rule those things if you wanted to, but the rules of the pack say that you don't put those modular sets, and you don't put the standard cards in any of these decks. They're already kind of formulated to work a certain way and to work together in certain ways, as we saw, and that's it. And so it only gives you 3 difficulty modes in the rule book, and I've told you what they are, I think. Standard, Expert, and Extreme Challenge. If I haven't told you, that's what they are. And Standard is where you beat the A side of each villain. Expert is where you beat the B side of each villain, and then Extreme Challenge is the A and B side. Really, that's it. Yes, you can play where you beat the B side twice for each one of them, and I know people that do that, but that's a house rule. That's not officially in the rule book. Obviously you can do that, but the rule book just has a standard that I can remember. Just has a standard, an expert, an extreme challenge. So you can make it whatever you want, but on its own, it really only has about 3 games in it. And yes, you can play heroes against it, different heroes, and that can add replayability, but all the villains can do that. You can play all the different heroes against all the villains the same way. So that's not even really different here than what you can do with any of the other villains. On its own, it only provides really 3 games, in my opinion, and that's about it. I like the pack, but the replayability is limited. Also, you are going to have to find your own way to track health and to track whoever the active villain is. That's not a big deal. I understand that, but it doesn't come with any kind of token to show you who the active villain is. It doesn't come with health dials. I like to use turn down dice that I have from another game, but some people use the dials that, the hero dials for each one of them, and then maybe they use the villain dial like if you're playing by yourself. But you're going to have to find your own way to track health for these villains and to track whoever the active villain is. That's not a big deal, but that is something you have to consider because it doesn't come in the pack. Also, this is one of the easier scenarios in my opinion. This one and Risky Business are two of the easiest, I think. And the reason why I say that is because when they scheme, they don't put threat on the main scheme. So really, all you really have to do is just make sure you're keeping the main scheme under control. Remove threat every now and then. Make sure you're doing that, and just pay attention to your health. Don't let, first of all, don't ever let your health drop below 3. Why do I say that? Because Wrecker's side scheme is going to hit you for 2 damage if his goes off. So if you have 3 health, you'll at least survive that. So don't ever let your health drop below 3. But if your health starts to get low, 5 or 6, just flip the Alter Ego and heal up, and they'll scheme, and bad things will happen, but they're not going to put threat on the main scheme. So just keep the main scheme under control and keep an eye on your health, and I think eventually you'll win the game. Now, I've lost to the Wrecking Crew. It's possible to lose. Extreme Challenge does provide a nice little challenge, in my opinion, and an Expert can too. But compared to Claw with Masters of Evil, or Ultron, or the Mutagen Formula, or even Rhino, in some circumstances, in my opinion, the Wrecking Crew just isn't as hard as some of those other scenarios. This is one of the easier scenarios. And so that's the Wrecking Crew scenario pack. Now let me give you my thoughts and recommendation on which one I think you should buy if you're looking at buying just one of the packs. And so there you have it. You have the Green Goblin scenario pack and the Wrecking Crew scenario pack. And really, there's not much competition here. It's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. The Green Goblin scenario pack just has an overall better value than the Wrecking Crew pack. As we saw, it has those 11 different games that it provides on its own, just out of the pack, and it has the Mutagen Formula scenario that I think is pretty interesting and challenging. And it's one of my favorite, and it's a hard scenario. And I know a lot of people want some difficulty like that in their cooperative games, and so the Green Goblin pack offers that. And then you have the Wrecking Crew pack, and it really only offers those 3 different game modes of Standard, Expert, and Extreme Challenge within itself, because you don't put modular sets in any of it. All 4 of those decks are set. You're not going to be putting modular sets in. Your Nemesis menu won't come out. And yes, I understand that, you can house roll away, I guess, to put modular sets in, or house roll away to put in your Nemesis menu so there's a chance the Nemesis can come out. But, you have to house rule that. It on its own, what it provides on its own is really just those 3 different levels of difficulty of, as I said, Standard, Expert, and Extreme Challenge. And so I do like the Wrecking Crew pack, and I'm glad I own it. But I think that if somebody was going to just buy one of these 2 packs right now, the one that they should buy is the Green Goblin scenario pack. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider to like and subscribe. I will be doing some more comparisons with some of the hero packs that have come out through Hulk. So I'm going to do them in order as they came out. So Captain America will go against Miss Marvel, and then I'll eventually do Thor and Black Widow, and then Doctor Strange versus Hulk. That's how I'm going to do it. But I'm going to be putting those out eventually. So hit the notification bell if you're interested in that, and get those out as soon as I can. And until those videos come out, I'll save you a seat at the table.